It's week 2 in the NFL. We give you our 3 best bets for Sunday, as well as let you know how you can take home $1,000 absolutely free in our NFL betting contest, and it all starts right now. Hey guys, it's Matt from Grandstand Bettors. After a fun and exciting week, it's NFL Week 2. We have our 3 best bets for you here. Also, don't forget our NFL betting contest is live at grandstandbettors.com. It's absolutely free. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but if you're new to Grandstand Bettors, go ahead, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our free picks or free predictions all NFL season long. While you're at it, smash that like button if you are excited for NFL week number 2 getting started here. But without further ado, let's dive into our 3 best bets of week 2 in the NFL. And we're going to start with a NFC divisional matchup in the South between the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. Kickoff for this game is at 1 o'clock, and the Saints are favored by 3.5 with the over-under at 44.5. Now, last week, the Saints got off to a great start with a dominating win, 38-3 over the Packers. At the moment, Jameis Winston silenced a lot of critics. He threw for 148 yards, 5 touchdowns, and had a completion percentage of 70%. He also completed passes to 8 different receivers and ran for 37 yards. You pair that with Alvin Kamara and Tony Jones Jr., who each rushed for 83 yards. This Saints offense looked great against the Packers defense. They can definitely still put up some points without Drew Brees. Now, defensively, they looked sharp as well. They had 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery, only giving up 43 rushing yards to a Packers offense. Now, we can't give all the props to the Saints defense, as Aaron Rodgers was absolutely horrible. But this did look like a solid unit with the way they limited the Packers' run defense and did a good job limiting Davante Adams' targets. This week, though, they're going to face Sam Darnold, who normally is nowhere near Rodgers' level of skill, but in week 1, he looked more comfortable behind a better offensive line, and he had several viable downfield threats to utilize as well. The Saints defense is also going to have to deal with that guy, Christian McCaffrey, who's going to be a good test for the Saints defense, who was number 4 in the run defense last year. But remember, they did lose Trey Hendrickson off the defensive line this offseason, so that issue is still in doubt. We'll see how they manage Christian McCaffrey this week. They did struggle a bit last year defending against the screen pass and tracking opponent running backs out of the backfield, something that Carolina loves to do with McCaffrey. So that's going to be a big and huge part of the game to look at. Speaking of the Panthers, they also started 1-0 with a 19-14 win over the Jets. It did take until about 7 minutes left in the first half for the first points to be scored, which ended up being a field goal by the Panthers. But that's kind of expected with a new quarterback and a new system now with Sam Darnold there. After they got a couple drives rolling, they scored 2 touchdowns, and before halftime, their offense kind of stalled again as they came out into the second half. With a week under Sam Darnold now and a big home division matchup, we expect their offense to look a little more fine-tuned, put some more points on the board, and stick with this high-powered Saints offense. Defensively, on paper, they look as good as any, giving up only 14 points in the opener, but let's remember, that was against the Jets and rookie quarterback Zach Wilson. Now, they only picked them off once, gave up 207 passing yards in the game, but their run defense was fantastic. They held the Jets' rushing attack to 45 yards on 17 attempts, but defending Tevin Coleman and Alvin Kamara is a completely different story. The Panthers defense gave up 121 yards rushing last season, and Kamara against them last season had 83 rushing yards and 65 receiving yards in that game that he played. So they got to keep him as a priority, keep the production to a minimum if they even want to have a shot in this game. However, if they focus only on Kamara, as we saw in week 1 against the Buccaneers, Winston can make you pay in the secondary. So they're going to have to look at both Kamara and Winston if they want to keep this game close. This young Panthers defense, who struggled a lot last season, is going to have to do a great job balancing the two. And with the offensive weapons on both sides, on both teams here, we see points definitely getting put up on the board. The Saints averaged 30 points per game last season. The Panthers also put up 21 points per game last year, and that mark's going to even be higher with McCaffrey now active. So we like the Saints to put up points and the Panthers offense to get rolling this week. So our first pick in week 2, we're actually going to take Panthers Saints over 44.5. Now, the second game we're going to look at is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Arizona Cardinals, in which the Cardinals are favored by 3.5, and the over-under is set at 50.5. Minnesota Vikings coming off a heartbreaking loss to the Cincinnati Bengals in overtime last week, one in which they trailed for most of the game, then tied the game up as it ended in regulation, and then ended up losing in overtime. So after taking a 7-0 lead last week, Kirk Cousins and the offense struggled for the rest of the first half, but looked much better in the second half. Cousins ended up completing 73% of almost his 50 pass attempts and threw for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. His favorite target was Adam Thielen, who caught 9 receptions for 92 yards and scored both touchdowns through the air. As well as their passing game, they had a rushing game with Dalvin Cook, but it was awful. Cook rushed 20 times for 61 yards. He did punch one in the end zone, but if the Vikings want to have any shot at a chance of postseason hopes, they're going to have to drastically improve. And to be fair, they were down more than 2 touchdowns, and the clock was against them. So in the second half, there was not much going on in the run game, and they couldn't afford to run the ball either. So that might be different this week. The other area of concern, though, for the Vikings is penalties. Now, we know that it's the first game of the season, but they were constantly putting themselves in and back of the line of scrimmage. They were 2nd and 20, 3rd and 20 in situations. They had 12 penalties, 116 yards. Compare that to the Bengals, who only had 3 penalties and for 15 yards. It was kind of amazing that the Vikings were even in this. Now, the Vikings defense wasn't horrible. They allowed Burrow to throw for 217 yards, but they did seem prone to giving up rushing yards. Mixon had a great day, 29 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown. The Vikings, however, were fantastic with their third down defense, forcing the Bengals to actually go 3 for 14 on third down. They also sacked Burrow 5 different times. They're going to be facing a 2-headed rushing attack here against with the Cardinals in Edmonds and Connor, so they're definitely going to need to fix the run defense this week, or they might find themselves down early again, and Cousins will maybe have to throw for another 50 times this week. Now, speaking of those Cardinals, they looked fantastic in Week 1. Tennessee Titans, they destroyed 38-13. Kyler Murray looked like a franchise quarterback that the Cardinals were hoping he would be, as he threw for 289 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground, and the Cardinals had a very balanced attack, as well as the previously mentioned 2-headed running attack there with Edmonds and Connor. They both saw kind of an equal share of rushing opportunities. Combined had 28 carries, 116 yards, but Edmonds is definitely the lead back here. He caught 4 passes out of the backfield for 43 yards as well. Now, Murray established spreading the ball around. The guy targeted 7 different receivers, but Hopkins, as expected, led the way with 6 catches for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also found Kirk in the end zone twice as well. Now, we knew Murray and the offense could put up numbers, but what was shocking, just absolutely shocking to everyone, was how well their defense played against the likes of Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. Now, overall, the Cardinals limited the Titans to only 248 yards and held Derrick Henry to only 58 yards rushing on 17 carries, and Julio Jones to only 3 catches for 29 yards, whom was visibly frustrated, and he picked up a penalty, an awful penalty at that in the game. Now, the highlight of the Cardinals' defense, let's talk about it. Chandler Jones picking up 5 sacks. It's absolutely crazy. We're not saying he's going to break the single-season sack record, but if you're going to try and do it, 5 sacks in the first week is definitely the way to go. The Vikings, although they lost last week, did show signs of being the team we thought they could be in the second half. They're going to try to get Dalvin Cook a little more involved in this game, establish the run, and let's be honest, the Cardinals, they had a great game plan against the Titans, but they're a team that gave up 125 rushing yards a season ago, and you think that they probably can't keep up their pace from Week 1 all season long. So look for them to regress a little bit here, and the Vikings to probably put up 21-plus points. Now, the Cardinals will keep their balanced attack going this week, but Kyler Murray should have another good game against the Vikings secondary, and with the way the run defense looked, it looks like that Edmonds and Connor could probably go for 70-plus yards each. So, also, the Vikings, in all honesty, they're playing a very up-tempo game after Week 1. They rattled off 75 plays last week which was 7th most in the league through week 1. Arizona, they're going to be able to punch in 3 to 4 in the end zone here. The Vikings team gave up 27 to basically a sophomore Cincinnati team, so the over-under set at 50.5 right now. It's probably a little deflated. Probably should be up near 55 in our opinion, but it's a little deflated, I think, based off the Cardinals' defense and how they played against the Titans last week. So we have this game something like 28-27, but our second pick of week number 2 is going to be the Vikings-Cardinals over 50.5. Now, guys, we have one more pick for you for NFL Week 2. Just a reminder that you could win $1,000 from us here at Grandstand Bettors. All you have to do, sign up for our free NFL betting contest at grandstandbettors.com. The link is below in the description. And once you sign up, you'll be all set to make your picks for week number 2 and possibly go on a run to win $1,000. After week number 1, shout out to Greg K, who went 5-0 and is in first place. But it's anybody's game. There's still 17 more weeks of the season. Getting into our last best bet of week number 2, let's dive into the Cowboys and the Chargers game. This game, again, is in the 4 p.m. time slot with the Chargers favored by 3.5. The over-under is set at 55.5. Cowboys coming in with some extended rest time into this game. They played the Bucs on opening night, so they have a little more rest and a little more time to get prepared. Chargers coming in after beating the Washington football team 20-16. They actually dislocated Ryan Fitzpatrick's hip, got to play the backup for the most of that game there in the second half, but squeaked out a win coming in 1-0. Now, the Cowboys looked very good in the first game of the season. They did everything they could in that game, but they didn't win. It was interesting to see, though, how limited Zeke Elliott was. He only had 11 touches for 33 yards. It was very clear early on that the Cowboys were going to go against what was one of the biggest weaknesses last year, the Bucs, and that was their secondary. Prescott threw for 58 times, completing 42 passes for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an INT. The guy really used all his weapons on the offense, and 7 different receivers had 3 or more catches, but Cooper and Lamb were by far his favorite targets, combining for 20 catches, 240 yards, and all 3 of his touchdowns. The defense of the Cowboys, as predicted, was absolutely awful. Hence why with a minute left in the game, it was very easy for Brady to march down the field, get them in range, and score the winning points. The secondary for the Dallas Cowboys gave up 379 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, but they did get 2 interceptions off of Brady. The defensive line looked much improved, however, giving up only 52 yards on the ground. But take it for what it's worth, because the Bucs really only rushed for 14 times as a team. And you think they're going to probably be a little more tested here with Austin Eckler. Speaking of the Chargers and Eckler, they are coming off that win 20-16 in week 1. Eckler, he did not have a good game. He only rushed for 57 yards on 15 carries. However, it was a very good defense they were going up against in the Washington football team. Now, Herbert threw for 47 times for over 330 yards. He had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Herbert did a nice job, again, of using all his receivers, with Keenan Allen actually leading the way with 9 catches and 100 yards. And Mike Williams citing everyone. This guy has had a really big disappointment in his career. Targeted 12 times, caught 8 for 80, and added his Herbert's only receiving touchdown or passing touchdown. So it appears that Williams can be trusted, and if he can be trusted to catch the ball, he may become Herbert's favorite red zone target. But listen, only time will tell. It's hard to take really anything away regarding the offense of the Chargers. They ran almost 30 more plays from scrimmage than Washington. They were 14 of 19 on third downs. They held the ball for almost 13 more minutes than Washington. And they were in the red zone 6 times. But they ended up only winning by 4 against a backup QB. And in all honesty, they probably should have lost the game. The red zone offense is again where the Chargers are lacking this season. They move so easily between the 20s. But against one of the best defenses in the league, they could not put the ball in the end zone as much as they wanted to. Now, if it was hard to take anything away from the Chargers' offense, it was a little more difficult to grade their defense, as they knocked Ryan Fitzpatrick out of the game with a dislocated hip, and they had the opportunity to face backup Taylor Heineke. Heineke threw for 122 yards against him and a touchdown, but Gibson rushed for 20 times, averaging 4.5 yards a carry, and that was a Chargers defense knowing they were going to run the ball with a backup in there. Looking at this game, the Cowboys, even though they threw the ball all over Tampa, will probably look to be a little bit more balanced this week and see if Elliott can't be successful in the run game. And we think that's going to actually open up the pass game for Prescott, and he'll be able to sling that ball much more easily down the field to Cooper and Lamb. We know the Cowboys defense is awful, and this could most likely be a shootout, but we think this team is on a mission this year, and although they lost to Tampa last week, and they did it in bad fashion, and at the hands of the greatest QB of all time, I think that they're going to bounce back here. Justin Herbert and his Chargers team, they have not proven they can make big plays when they need to. And because of that, we are going to take the Dallas Cowboys plus 3.5 as our third best bet of the week. That's it for us guys here at Grandstand Bettors. Make sure to join that NFL betting contest. Make sure if you have already joined, you put your week picks in. Make sure you click that link below to get your picks in. And as always, sit back, relax, enjoy week 2 of the NFL, and we'll see you next week.